Today we're gonna go over some welding. Right now I welded together a UFO. It's a little jittery, but it is in working condition. You can abduct people and they shrink when you abduct them. I'll go over how you can weld an object like this and how you can script objects to the welded vehicle itself. So first we'll go over some welding dynamics and how you can weld an object together if you do not know how. And if you do, just stay for the ride. So right now this is my welded object. Your blue object is your parent object, which means that's going to be the main object that all the other ones are connected to. So right now I am going to unprefab this, ungroup it together so you can see it all. All of your objects have to be dynamic normal to be able to weld them together. So when you get two objects together, you hold your your X button, and then you go and you weld them. And then you see this one is now the parent object. That's because whatever one you select first is going to be your parent object. When you go to the object settings, you can change it, but sometimes it doesn't let you. So right now we're going to ungroup that together. And then we'll go over here to this. So right here, we're going to move this around. As you see, I can't move it inside of this object. But what you can do to get it inside of the object if you wanted, you can go and change your physics to no collision, right? And then you're going to change the other objects around it to no collision as well. And then you'll take this, you'll put it inside. Now you'll change that back to normal. Take your other objects that you changed to no collision. We're going to select them all again. There's one more in there. I can't get. And then we're going to change those back to normal as well. And then you select this. And now you can weld those objects together. Now, the problem with doing this is it looks very, very good, beautiful, and it may work in Forge when you put it together in this way, but when you go into custom games, it might not work. So what we're going to do is we're going to ungroup this, we're going to pull this back out, and then we are going to put it back the way I had it, so they are just touching, and they are not inside of each other. Now, to show you, we're gonna go and select this because I want my wasp. Anytime you're making a vehicle be a welded object, you want the object of the vehicle to be your parent object. So right now we're gonna select all my objects that I'm using because we want to weld all of them together. Well, right now, I'm not going to weld the pointer that's under it because we're going to go into scripting in a minute. So now that we got them all welded together, and now you can see my wasp is my parent object. Just double check that you have all your objects together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select this and we're going to go to the menu. What you want to do to make sure any welded vehicle works correctly is you want to turn the children mass to on. Make them massless. So that way all of these objects down here aren't going to weigh down the wasps. That's what happens when you miss an object. But if you miss an object, it's not that hard to add. You just want to select it and then go and add it to the prefab. And then every time you add a prefab, you want to make sure you go back and turn the massless children back to on. Now, as you see, I can go around, turn perfectly fine, right? Now let me show you with the massless children off the difference. Now when I have the massless children off, right? Now I can only move left to right. I can hardly move left. It's going very, very hard. But this is the control. I hardly have any control over it now. So we're going to go back. And we're going to turn that back on. Now let's get into some scripting for welded objects. Now as you see this wasp, you can't see it every time I'm in the UFO. There's a reason for that. So we are shrinking this wasp every time we are getting into it. And in order to do that, you have to mess around with the scripting before you weld your objects together. So we're going to ungroup everything here, and then we're going to go into our scripting. So on gameplay start, I am putting my spawn inside of the wasp. All right. So in order to do that, I'm sorry, I got two cursors on here. So in order to do that, you need to reference the wasp, right? We're referencing the specific wasp and not the whole prefab area. So we're attempting to enter the vehicle on player spawn and on gameplay start. This is just for me. This is a script that I'm going to change in the future. Now let's get to the wasp and why the wasp is shrinking. So in case you don't know, the scale and destroy is what you want to use to shrink a object or a player. So on vehicle entered is what we're going to use. We're using a wasp, so I want to use get vehicle type is wasp, or you can change it to a specific wasp. And then after that, we're going to use a branch because we want to make sure the condition of the wasp is true. And then when we enter the wasp, we're going to scale and destroy the vehicle. So you want to connect the vehicle node to vehicle and then change the durations in seconds to just 0.1. And that way, when you get into the wasp, it will shrink inside like it does. Oops. As you see, it's small. All my objects broke because we didn't weld it together. But that's what's going to shrink your wasp and make it invisible to the eye. Now we're going to get into how I abduct people. So we are using a pointer, which is pointer, just a regular pointer, area monitor. So when you enter the area monitor of the pointer, you are going to move the player up. You're going to then shrink the player and kill him, or whatever object that you were trying to abduct. And when we go, this is the pointer that we're using. That is under our vehicle. So this is the pointer that is going to be for a lot of things. So this pointer needs to be welded with every other object. But you have to make sure that you do the reference for the pointer before you weld the object, because that's the only way it will work. So whatever you do to any area monitors will work, but you have to make sure that you do it in the script first. And then this light. So this light can't be welded to any object, right? Because it can't be I don't know, it just can't be welded. So the fact that we can't weld that object together, we're going to attach it to the pointer. So every little second, like split second, we are attaching the light to the position of the pointer. And we are also setting this script up before we weld any object. So let's show you how it works. So we're going to weld all these together again. Make sure you grab your pointer this time. I didn't grab it before because I wanted to show you everything. Oh, something's wrong. That's why. Alright, my fault. We're going to weld all these objects together again. Now that we got all these objects welded, when you go into the scripting, it's going to show that it's a prefab now. That prefab 10, that's what the pointer used to be. So that's why you want to script it before, because if you just script prefab 10 after, your scripts, your events that you're trying to trigger are not going to work the correct way. So now we're in the air. We got the light following me, and I forgot to put massless children on. Always remember to put massless children on. There we go. Now it's back to working. Now, let me show you how you can reference all the objects in your welded object. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do, get object in prefab, or you can use an object list variable. So what you want to do is say you want to delete and spawn all these objects, correct? Right, so this is how we're going to do it. You're going to want to grab your prefab and make sure you go to labels and change the label to whatever you want. In this case, we are using uniform for UFO. We are going to go in and let's say, where's on gameplay start? We're gonna delete entering the vehicle for now. Alright. Just to show you this. On gameplay start. I'm gonna get for all objects. For each object, right? Objects. And then we are gonna get objects by label. Get object list variable. We're going to have the same identifier named UFO. Scope, we're going to put these on global. So that way we can do it in any brain. And then we are going to delete the object. So say you want to delete all the objects. Execute per object, current objects. And then you will spawn them anyway. So right now, you'll find an event if you want to spawn it. Because if you just try to delete prefab and spawn prefab, it won't work. So if you want to spawn it, you got to spawn it by all objects. So that way we're going to go events players on player mark. On player mark. Now we are going to take on player mark. For each object. We're going to connect that to the same get object list variable. And then instead of spawn object, instead of delete object, we are going to spawn the objects. So now you see that my prefab's gone. And now there it is. Whee! UFO, UFO. Just to show you, it wouldn't work the normal way. It won't be that long. Look. Just to show you, it won't work by deleting the prefab. See? It's still there, unfortunately. So, you can't spawn and delete them that way, but for each object you can, and declaring a object list variable. That, for now, is going to conclude my first video on welding and scripting for welding. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment or send me a DM, and look forward to more videos to come. I will try my best to make them most educational as possible, and thank you for watching.